Adam, so nice to meet you today. And could you tell us a little bit about what happened here last summer and why you responded the way that you did?
Yeah, so last summer, after the tragic stabbings in Southport and after the mosque was attacked there in Southport, the police were attacked. That was the first riot. Very shortly after, we saw a list being circulated of future protests. And the first on the list was the Abdullah Quillier Mosque, where we're sat now here in Liverpool. So there was a lot of worry. Several people were sending me this flyer to my inbox saying, have you seen this? Do you know what's happening? What's going on? A lot of people were worried, and rightly so, because we'd just seen the Southport Mosque being trashed. We've seen brick walls being broken down, horrible clashes and violence with the police there. And so people didn't know what was going on. I remember I was driving with my son on our way to Bradford, and I said to my son, record this video. And I made a video which I posted on my social media. And in this video, because not only had I been told that there would be a protest, I was told there would be a counter protest of people from the anti-racist coalition, and lots of different people from different segments of society were going to be coming together to do a counter protest. And I just thought, this sounds like trouble. Do we really want to see this trouble outside our mosque? And so I did this video, and I said something along the lines of, anybody who comes to our mosque tomorrow, you will be treated as our guests, and we will prepare food for you. So I sent this out. It started to go fairly viral, and then the mixture of responses I had was interesting. Very few people, if I'm honest, kind of offered me support for the idea which I was proposing, because I think people were worried about security, about safety. I even got one phone call from somebody within the Muslim community, quite a prominent figure, and he said, you need to take that video down. He said, the police aren't happy with it, and you need to stop this plan of yours. To which I remember I responded to him. I said, if the police aren't happy with it, get them to call me and ask me to take it down, because this is what we stand for. We know how to be hospitable, and we know how to treat people like guests. So then that transpired, and what we did, we decided that the safety and security was the number one priority. And this is very, very important, because a lot of people have said what we did was brave, and it takes a lot of courage. But the safety and security in a sensitive time like this is the priority. So we did coordinate with the police. On the night of the protest itself, about 100 at the max turned up to protest against the mosque. There were around maybe 700 people on the counter-protest side. So there's a message within that in itself in terms of the numbers. Far many more people came out to counter-protest than they did to protest against the mosque. But that wasn't the point. Like I'd said the day before, everybody who came were our guests. And so I spoke with the head of the police operations, and I explained to her that it's really important for me and my community to go over and speak with these people. Bear in mind, this is based on a track record which the work which I've been involved in for many years has been dealing with people, members of far-right organizations, Islamophobes, people who've shouted at us, people who've given abuse towards us. And so we do have that experience, and it's always been a positive experience. And this is what I wanted to convince my community of, and the rest of society, that there's a danger of looking at the other and putting them all into one box and considering them to all be nasty, horrible, evil people, which ironically is what you're accusing them of doing to you. So if that is a bad thing for them to do to you, assuming that they are, then why would you respond in a similar way? And I like to raise awareness of this idea that everybody has goodness inside them. Everybody has that goodness inside them. And it's the job of those who can recognize that to activate the goodness inside them. And I think what transpired on that night, eventually the police, they said, we don't think the situation is suitable. I went over again. We waited 3 hours We waited 3 hours listening to the chants and the slogans from both sides until we were given the thumbs up. And then we went over, we took food over, we ate together, we listened to a lot of the concerns. Some of the people were screaming abuse in our faces as well. But eventually, everything calmed down. And the irony is, everybody on both sides, so imagine it's a lovely summer's day. You know, why do you want to even be here in the first place? What I discovered is, after I went over to the other side, is they wanted to go home, but they didn't want to be seen to be the first ones to leave, because then the other protesters have got the victory. And the same was on the other side. But shortly after we went over and we gave food, we listened to them, we spoke with them, we had these interactions. That was like the catalyst, if you like, for... It was almost as if, okay, the peace deal has been made and we can all go home now. And we invited the week after. I actually wanted to do it on the night itself, but the police didn't support us in that. I wanted to bring the protesters, the people who protested inside the mosque, into the building and allow them to share whatever concerns they had. But we did that a week later. Some of the protesters came along and the experience was very, very positive.
And what's happened since then? Have you had any kind of ongoing connection with people that you met on that day?
So a lot has happened since, and I was asked recently whether I've had any formal training in restorative justice. And I said, as far as kind of Western academic principles go, I haven't, but my faith tradition has more than enough to equip me to deal with a situation like that. And so examples which I'd refer to, even the founder of this mosque, Sheikh Abdullah Quliam, you know, in Victorian times, a group of ruffians came to the mosque and pelted it and broke the windows. His response the day after was to open the doors and invite people in for sandwiches and talk to them. So we have this more recent example from Victorian times. It's the heritage of this building, of this mosque. But we also have these faith traditions, and we have example after example of where somebody would come up to the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, and they'd abuse him, whether that was verbally or whether it was physically. And his response to that abuse would always be excellence. It would always be kindness. It would always be welcoming. And so we have these teachings, and since the riots, because don't forget, after the protest at the mosque, there was a larger Save Our Children demonstration, which turned into a riot, which happened on the pier head. And thousands of people went to that. A lot of people in Liverpool were shocked, because Liverpool has always been seen to be a left-leaning city. And then to see families in those numbers at that demonstration, it was quite shocking and worrying for a lot of people. And then what happened soon after that is I decided to reach out to the people who were there. And actually, in fairness, some of them reached out to me. And before you know it, I was having a discussion with like 6, if you like, of the ringleaders who took their communities. And I quickly learned that they're not racists, they're not Islamophobes, they're not far-right ideologues. They were just genuine families who were shaken, like the rest of us, by the stabbings in Southport, and they wanted to do something. They felt helpless. This was presented to them by this small minority of people, mainly from outside Liverpool, who came and facilitated this event, and then they took their families and their people along. The feedback what I got is that many of them, when they arrived at the protest, they saw things turning violent, they saw the attacks on the police. They understood very quickly that they weren't meant to be there. They were in the wrong kind of it. They'd been dragged into something which they didn't kind of sign up for. And so what's been happening since then is, for example, we were invited to a day trip in northern Wales, where we took a coach full of Muslim people, a coach full of people from North Liverpool. We went walking in the countryside, digital detox. We put our mobile phones away for the day. No Twitter, no Facebook, none of this toxicity what you see on social media, which, by the way, is where a lot of these narratives which are breaking and dividing people are coming from. And it was amazing. And you should have seen the faces on the people in this North Wales village when 2 coachloads of people came up. And it was like a bunch of Muslims that's strange. And then a bunch of the scousest scousers you're ever going to see. And then, that's strange. And then they saw we were together. And it's like, what's going on here? Yeah, but we had a walk in the countryside, and we at the prayer time, what happened is Muslims were praying. Don't forget, tensions were very, very high back then. And people were really worried. We didn't know which direction things were going in. But when we prayed that prayer in the Welsh Hills, we felt very safe because we knew that the Scousers, who just a week ago were at this Save Our Children protest, we knew that they would defend us if anybody wished us any harm. And that was really powerful. And then after that, we made circles together and we discussed things, and we had some gratitude exercises, and everyone in the circle was, counting their blessings, if you like. And then since then, it's developed into me going out, visiting people in their MMA gyms. We've had Muslim boys invited to the gyms to train with some of the boys from their community. And this is the key thing. Don't underestimate the role which food has to play in this. Food is very, very, very important. The first words which were uttered by the Prophet Muhammad when he arrived into Medina were spread peace and feed people food. Those two things. He was literally establishing a new society. Spread peace and feed people food. And we have the English saying, which says the way to a man's heart is through his stomach. So what I've found is food is an amazing catalyst to bring people together. And it's not necessarily the action of the eating food itself, but what food does is forces you to sit together, and then you can talk together. But the most important part is listening to the other side. And I think for as long as we're talking about the other and not talking with the other, I think food is one way that we can bring people together. So we've got lots of events. There are many more bridges which have been built, and many good things which have come up. Silver lining to the cloud, if you like. But the kind of motivation behind that was, and people smile when I say this. So I've got roots and I've got links to Yemen, and in Yemen it's a very tribal country. And what happens when the government doesn't have any say in what goes on? The heads of the tribes will come together and they'll deal with things, and they'll make their agreements together. And what I did after the riots in Liverpool, I kind of saw it as almost like tribal diplomacy, where I looked for, and in some cases was approached by, the tribal leaders of the other side. And we've sat together. We've had really, really deep discussions, talking about things like the psychology of hate, talking about politics, talking about immigration, illegal immigration, talking about things like grooming gangs and all these issues which seem to be tearing us apart. But we've had those discussions together. And I hope that a kind of resilience has been built in Liverpool at least, so as if any future event, God forbid, like what happened in Southport was to happen, I hope and I pray that we wouldn't be in a similar position in Liverpool. And I'd like to think that the friendships and the alliances what have been built since the last riots will work as a means of protecting us from that.
So not everybody who's listening or watching this is going to have people protesting outside their place of work. But everybody can probably think of a difficult conversation that they might need to have with somebody that they disagree with. What advice would you give to them for how to approach that difficult conversation?
So advice, what I would give to people who might find themselves in a position where they feel they have to have difficult conversations, is avoid debates for the sake of debates. Because a debate is not about the truth, it's about one person winning another. That's what it is at its essence. And quite often, the winning is down to the skill of the debater, not necessarily the subject which you're debating. Have discussions. So discussion is not about winning. It's not about me being better than you. Discussion is, like I've been saying, people coming together, talking, but more importantly, listening. However, a person does have to have self-restraint. If you're easily offended, I wouldn't advise you put yourself in that position, because many people, they thrive, they understand the power of words, and they thrive on saying the things which they know will hurt you the most and trigger you the most to get an emotional response from you. So you need to have tough skin. You need to be able to hear a lot of things which might really upset you. Imagine if the things which are dearest to you and most beloved to you are attacked. That can hurt people to their core. Counselors, they call this skill of listening to things which are very, very uncomfortable, but not reacting. They call it the white hot heat. And sometimes you just have to listen. You have to let it burn inside. Sometimes you have to give the other person to get whatever is on their shoulders off. Allow them to unload. And quite often, a lot of the hurtful things which they will say, that's not the issue. That's not the point. But they're hurt, and a natural thing for somebody who is hurt to do is to hurt other people as well. And so the things they say, look beyond that and look at what the real issue is. And what I've found is that people who say the harshest, most hurtful things, actually what that is a projection of the pain that they're feeling inside. And I know this sounds cliche, but sometimes all people need is a hug. They just need a hug. They need somebody to listen. They need somebody to care. They need somebody to be kind for once. And it can be very, very difficult and challenging when you hear these things. So if you are easily offended, I would advise maybe don't be involved in that kind of setting in the first place. Maybe set up a safe space to have these discussions. So if you do want to establish boundaries, establish those boundaries. Go to a neutral place, maybe arrange a meeting, and make it very clear that this is a no aggression zone, and then continue with the discussion that way. But I do think there are a lot of difficult conversations which need to be had, and we need to have the right people who can have those conversations. And one quality and one characteristic which inspires me is this characteristic of clemency. And this is, the more abuse that somebody throws at you, the more you can convert that into kindness and responding with which is better, which is something which I still haven't perfected. There's a long way to go. It's very difficult on the ego. Your ego does not like to be criticized. You don't like to be criticized. You don't like your religion to be criticized. You don't like your God to be criticized. You don't like your people. You don't like criticism. But as I've been saying, sometimes it's not about the criticism itself. There's usually something beyond that, and that is a desire to be heard, or to be respected, or to be loved. And the ideal situation is a situation where, when you interact with somebody who you disagree with, understand that you're never going to agree with everybody anyway, and respect that. Even if the person, in your opinion, is wrong, and even if what they're saying is untrue, it's ignorance, it's whatever it might be, understand that you can still agree on something, and that is, you're a human, I'm a human, we care for our loved ones, and we want the best for society. That's the hope anyway, that people do want the best for society. And then just agree to disagree. If somebody finds themselves in a situation which is very, very intense, shouting, aggression, it's probably best to either make that situation more calm, if possible, or if not, withdraw yourself from that situation, because you're never going. It's like I do humanitarian work, and when there's an active conflict zone, you can't do anything. You cannot take humanitarian aid into an active conflict zone. You have to wait for people either to withdraw from it to a safe area, and then you can provide for them, or wait for the conflict to stop, and then you can go in and have an impact. Likewise, when somebody's in conflict mode, aggression, violence, shouting, there's very little you can do. So either calm things down or walk away and return when the time is right.
So in those moments where things are getting a little bit heated, or you can feel the emotion rising within you, what helps you in those moments to respond in a helpful or healthy way?
Right. So with the Light Foundation, which is a small but national organisation, we've had events for many years where we invite people who are openly Islamophobic and people who are members of far-right organisations. In other words, people who see us as the enemy. We invite them to an event. There's often there's a police presence just in case. Again, security and safety it's the number one priority. And then there's a pattern which we see. So at the beginning of the event, people come in angry, charged up, often shouting down. Then what happens is things go calm and we have the discussion and the forwards and backwards. And then at the end, which is actually where the real magic works, people think it's in the discussion. I don't think the discussion is the main part of it. I think it's the food at the end, whether that's tea, coffee and biscuits or a meal or whatever it is, when members of their community and members of our community are forced to speak to each other with dignity and with respect, drink their tea, eat their biscuits. That's when the real magic happens. And that's what we need to see more of. And then almost everybody who comes in with hostile intentions, and in the case of fairness, also a lot of people from the Muslim community come in quite agitated and upset because the far right are here and they hate us, and therefore we should hate them. And it's amazing to see within one session. These are not people who we've sat down and worked with for years or months. This is a 1 to 2 hour session. Every single time we see magical results. People are literally converted out of their hatred and their ignorance. And then sometimes they discount it and they say, oh yeah, but you're nice Muslims. All the rest of them are still terrorists, gang grooming and all the rest of it. But think, oh, but you're the nice ones. But yeah, it's a common pattern. Starts with shouting and agitation. We go through this process of discussion and listening. Listening is really, really important. Sometimes you have to let them shout and just let them get it off their chest. And then by the end of it, they realize that, you know what, this is a reasonable human being. Okay, we might not have the same beliefs. Even our cultures might be different. Our understanding of the world might be very, very different. But you know what? We're humans at the end of this. And then you have the tea and the coffee and the biscuits and everybody makes friends. And I've mentioned this previously, it's not necessarily about the things which are being shouted, the slogans which are shouted. Quite often, the people who express their hatred for others, quite often they're projecting hurt which is inside them. And I've always said this: don't look at everybody as if they're horrible, evil, racist, Islamophobic people, because they're not. They have goodness inside them as well, and sometimes it just needs to be activated. And the way to activate that is not to respond to the way that they treat you. It's to respond with what is better, which goes back to clemency, which I was talking about before. And sometimes you can really surprise somebody when you deal with them, but they know they're abusing you. And imagine if you're abusing somebody, and the response to your abuse is actually kindness and what hopefully is interpreted to be a genuine connection, then I think that's really, really powerful. And I think that was the summary of the protest outside our mosque. You know, even as I was walking over, when I was finally given permission by the police, there were a couple of cameramen who were there, and I said, please don't come with me. Just let me go, because I didn't want it to be seen as this is for the media, this is a PR stunt. I wanted it to be genuine. And even though one photographer did come over and get that viral image, I think it's important that sometimes, you know, all these narratives, all these political arguments, all this hatred, all this ignorance, just throw it to one side and connect with somebody at a soul level, And I've been trying to educate my community as well, because we fall into the same trap. We see them as all being this uniform bunch of horrible, nasty people. And it's not like that. And we proved it. There are nice people. There are genuine people amongst their ranks. In fact, if you were to kind of audit their intentions, you might find that even though it's based on ignorance and misinformation, disinformation, lies, and all the rest of it, you'll find, if you audit their intentions, that they actually left their houses on that day, on a hot summer's day, when they could have been anywhere else, to come to protest at the mosque because what they thought they were doing was right. And it was a good thing to do for themselves and for society. And so what I like to do is I like to tap into that goodness, what's there, and just help direct it. And this is the point, you don't claim that you're better than anybody else. Everybody has this goodness inside them. And one thing I've been taught is it's like a cup of tea. Everybody has this sweetness in their hearts, just as the cup of tea has sugar in it. But for some people, it's settled at the bottom, and it just needs a bit of a stir to make them sweet again.